Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Real inspiration for real innovators. If you're looking for innovation and leadership transformation, your journey starts now.
Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Born. Well, I would love for you to spread the word so that others can listen to this podcast as well. Today, I want to welcome Mali to the list of the 59 plus countries listening from around the world. Well, my guest this week is Bobby Matson. He is a University of Michigan grad obsessed with building better infrastructure for all borrowers. Bobby led engineering teams at Carbon 5, where he built technologies for groups like Groupon, Fandango, Stitchfix. You may have heard of some of these, and shipped software to millions of users. After managing a six-figure student debt, we've all been there, in his own life, he's now working at Payitoff to create better outcomes for every borrower. That's so awesome. Welcome to the podcast, Bobby.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So I got to hear a little bit more about your personal background. I think we've all done the whole student loan debt thing, and that's been a very frustrating journey to walk down. I'm debt free, crazy enough. I've paid off all my student loans a while ago, but it wasn't easy. It was very frustrating.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, I think six-figure student loans, my wife and I realized, we had been in and out of forbearance. It was really complex and hard to understand. So, it's really where my journey started. I mean, I'd started a company before in college at Michigan, which was more in the music tech space. So I was looking around at things to work on. You can't really rush an idea per se. You're always going to be testing a lot of things out. But this was something where, having that debt was such a big, issue for me. I didn't realize it was actually kind of a huge problem for almost every borrower to gain that sort of clarity. So that was, kind of informed for me, hey, this could be a company, there could be a bigger problem here to solve around the debt space. But yeah, once I realized how bad it was and that there was very little infrastructure helping borrowers with this problem, I felt like it was a good 10-year journey to go on. We saved tens of thousands of dollars, and now we have a 4-year-old. So like the early version of the software that helped us and codified all the regs and gave us a path forward really helped us, and that's really what led to the company, becoming more of a real thing. Was this is real impact you're having, and if you can scale this, there's a lot of impact that. And, economic benefit to that, because now we own a home and we can move forward financially. So that's really where it all started, was that pain point.
Yeah, and that's a big pain point. Like, as you think about, I would love to know more about just how you structured the software. Like, what were some of the main problems that you're trying to help people solve, where they're just maybe struggling and it's an uphill battle?
Yeah, the main problem we solve at Payitoff, so we automate every aspect of debt management. We really started in the student loan space because that was one of the most complex forms of debt. But it's just clarity. Clarity is what borrowers want. You want to know their best next step that's contextual to you. So, I felt like it was a good skill fit to work on this problem just because I had done that. Like when you search for a theater on Fandango, like I worked on the team there, that helped you figure that out. And that's, a complex problem to solve technically. But if you can give someone the AB, there's a lot of value, right? And that's one example of many that kind of were good skill fits for what I did towards Payitoff in the early days. But that was another reason I was like, hey, there's not even like a student loan API out there. Like someone needs to build that. So I remember that, those early moments of clarity, we got so much momentum from. And I knew that, might be a direct to consumer thing. I didn't know what the model would be per se, but I knew there was some huge pain point, and that my friends and friends of friends were all getting good outcomes from the engine too. And so I think that really is what started down the path of like, how can I, take the value being created by just this moment of guidance and turn that into a much broader application.
Wow. So I know like the student loan industry is very complex. Medical very complex, right? A lot of people have these massive medical bills. And then I know credit card debt is just very complex. Like, how did you approach trying to solve the problem for three very different, I would argue, industries, and how to kind of merge the idea of, paying off debt into kind of one software?
Yeah, so I think the first early moments with the company were really focused on student loans. So it was like solve one problem and go unreasonably deep. That is what we've been all about. Is just going really far down to like codifying all the regs, the various loan types, the 14 different repayment options, the hundreds of loan assistance programs, like just figuring out how to like pathfind a solution with all those variables at play. So that was the first sort of, and I would do this every time, future companies from now, which is just go totally insanely deep with one vertical where you can really, really solve the problem, like better than anyone else. And that was really, it took a couple business models. I think it was around three business models till that guidance really felt like, oh, this could be a high growth company. I'd be happy to talk about like, the fundraising journey and whether, you should raise and bootstrap. Like those are big questions that I was trying to answer through the process. But there was a moment where I said, wow, like any borrower using any app could do this, and we can do it better and no one else knows how to do it in student loans. So we just started there. And now we are in a lot of different debt verticals. For clarity, we aren't doing medical debt, but we do have mortgage, credit cards, personal loans, auto loans.
Which is plenty, by the way.
Yeah, it's lots of them. Yeah, what we did find, well, first off, to be totally frank, like student loans is definitely the most complex and hardest industry wise to adapt to. So I'm glad we started there because a lot of the engine is broadly applicable. Concepts like prepaying your loans are applicable in most debt verticals. A lot of the payment infrastructure is kind of similar. There's a bunch of different ways we can just port what we've done in student loans over. And we're actually finding some of the ways we differentiated in student loans, which is automating federal programs. There are lots of federal programs with these other debt verticals. And so there are ways we can even port over the things that I thought were just specific to student loans. So, I'm excited about where we're going to go. It's just about how many use cases can we generate over the next couple of years. The more use cases, the more impact is really the way we think about it.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, so I do want to go a little deeper on your journey. I mean, obviously you're an engineer, so maybe a little bit of an unfair advantage there over maybe some other people, right? Coming from different industries. I mean, a lot of the times you could really imagine and then build what you want it to build. Um, where did you decide, hey, I can do this kind of, on my own? And then when did you decide, hey, I need to bring in a team?
So great question. The first company I started in college, I actually wasn't technical. So I was a non-technical founder. So I had gone through that experience and, we had a technical founder of that company. I was more on the BD side, but was also doing a lot of the stuff I loved doing was product work. And I did engineering as a hobby. I was like making text adventure games or something. Like it was like something really small. I was writing music with Ruby, and that's where I got exposed to Ruby as I was learning how to program music. And that kind of snowballed into, hey, if you're going to build a software company, you either are going to be a technical founder or you're going to need a technical founder to do that. And I knew that I wanted to be a great leader in software. Like I wanted to be a company builder building software companies. And I also had the choice of, do I go all in on the non-technical founder or do I become a technical CEO? So that was actually a deliberate choice. I remember teaching myself to code over a summer, getting some junior engineer job after the end of that summer, and then, going on the path of, 6-7 years working at different companies and really muscling up on how not just how to program, but how to think about programming, how programmers, do well and are performant. And like I was able to work on some amazing product development teams. So I was really lucky for the experience to work at Carbon 5, to work around these big brands. That has really heavily informed how we execute. So I will say, like, if you don't have that advantage, say you're looking to start a company, then use the advantage you have, because now I'm backfilling a lot of sales background, right? Because I'm a solo founder, so I'm selling more than I'm building at this point. We have a great team, a product dev team, and I'm really proud of the team we have. When I knew we needed to scale the team up, to your question, is I could tinker with these various things. Like I was building the first customer of Payitoff. We did a lot of sort of direct to consumer testing in the beginning, where I was just basically like working with borrowers, and they pay for a plan and use the same engine to build their plan. And then financial advisors were coming to me and saying, "Hey, how do we do this? Can we just send you people, or like, can we do what you do?" And so I just licensed the admin tool that I was using, that I had built. So that was actually how I ended up having the first customer, was basically saying, "Oh, in 2 months, I'll build this admin for you, and you can use it to build plans." And that sort of was the first moment of like building in a market I knew was not like VC scalable. It was like a niche in a niche. I did know everyone was ignoring it, and no one was really helping these advisors out. So I spent a lot of time in that market, mainly me and like friends or contractors that worked with me. I was still bootstrapping the thing. But it gave us like a real edge, because we had all these complex cases in the early days that are still really a defensible part of the core engine. And that I knew that I needed a bigger team around me, and that I couldn't be building this stuff anymore when apps started joining the waitlist for our API. And we had like 50 apps on this wait list to just get repayment options, over a summer. And I was like, all right, well, I think we could raise some money and like actually serve this need. And then that was the growth moment. I was out of Bootstrap, which I had at the time planned on, maybe I could scale this Bootstrap thing and not raise it all. But I really wanted the impact. I really wanted to go do this for as many people as possible. So that was the moment where it was like, okay, bigger team time, that kind of thing.
Well, I love that like the customer demand drove the need to raise. I mean, I think sometimes, I have several friends who are in the process right now of raising funds, and there's not necessarily a demand per se. And so it gets a lot harder to get a valuable, return when you don't necessarily have the demand. I think when you have the demand, it's easier for you to say you can get a better return, because the demand is already there, and you're kind of already saying, hey, the proof of concept, it's not just an idea, there's demand here.
Right. Yeah, I think anytime you can eliminate risk for yourself as a founder, not just for the VCs you're pitching, but anytime you can eliminate the risk for yourself to put your time into it, that's a great lens, I think, that's helped me when fundraising, or seeing whether I should fundraise, is, okay, I've got real demand here. I've got like an early set of customers that I think we would really benefit from this. It's going to take me a while to do this alone or with like just a few contractors. It's a lot easier to tell that story to an investor and say, look, I got this demand here. I need to serve it. Do you want to help me? Or like, I'll find someone else that will. And, that's an easier pitch than like, here's an idea. I still have like 4 steps to get to the step that I've introduced just then, like, so that if you can just skip some steps for them, your valuation grows, your positioning grows, your leverage grows. All those things are important to fundraising.
Wow. What do you like when you think about your idea and just where you've taken it? Do you feel like the best ideas come out of like a personal frustration or pain that you're personally feeling? Or do you feel like, great ideas can come from anywhere? I mean, when you're thinking about somebody who's, listening to this and they're like, man, I really want to be a founder. I really want to start something of my own and stop the grind to 5, so to speak. Like, what's going to push you the furthest when you think about cultivating an idea?
Yeah, I do. I am a big believer in the personal need. I'm not a big believer in like, you need to have this crazy passion. So I do think that success breeds passion. So when you start doing something and you get good feedback loops that you're doing well at it and you have a knack for it, or maybe some unique proposition, that actually breeds a lot of passion. So I think when I saw in the early days I was helping us with something and everyone I knew with this debt, I was like, that's exciting. This is something for me that really, and I still reference and go back to those moments of like the very real demonstrable impact of those days. And even though the software wasn't at all built out the way it is now, it was still just early signals of like, I know how it feels, the emotional aspect of this debt. I know how it feels, the sort of head in the sand moments. You can speak to the borrower, and you can also speak to the industry where you're like, hey, you guys, like, advisors don't know how to do this stuff. Like, who do people turn to? Everyone's going to Reddit threads and spreadsheets, and they're getting it wrong, and student loan experts are getting it wrong. And I was just sort of like, I was in this mode of like, wow, this is really this is really bad. So that was the moment for the like going. I think there's a difference between solving a need and then it being a company. Those are pretty different things because you can solve a need and it might not be a company. You might be creating more value at your job than you are at that company, or building that into a company. So you do have to be really honest with yourself about what's the size of the market. Like, do the homework, do the customer discovery, do the market work, and prove it to yourself. And then at that point, if you've proven that to yourself and you have people around you that are excited about what you're doing, then it's riskier to have a job than it is to go do that, right? So I would say that's the moment when I was like, okay, I'm going to leave my job, is when it was riskier to have the job for my career than to continue.
Wow, that's cool. I love that lens that you added, because I think that gives people a lot of food for thought, just something to think about in terms of you know when or even if to make that leap. And I think for some it's definitely an if, because there needs to be other things that you kind of mentioned that are in alignment there. So I want to get back to kind of the student loan industry, because it is frustrating and fascinating all at the same time. Um, Talk a little bit about, like, when you think about, you said something earlier about going very deep to solve the problem. What were some of your aha moments? And even as you're talking, I'm thinking about this book that I read, and they really focused on nailing a niche, right? Like, startups need to nail a niche. They really need to focus before, and that's oftentimes where a lot of like startups go wrong, is they try to focus too broad, too fast, and they don't nail the area they're in, because nailing that actually tells you whether or not you should go into other areas. So as you think about the complexity in this, like, what were some of the things that just surfaced for you that were principles?
Yeah, I think the way this industry felt was, and it still feels this way, just in general, which is you unlock one opening or opportunity or outcome. And we focus the whole system on how do we improve the financial outcome for the end user? That's just how everything's designed. Is around the end savings, making sure that's green. And I remember being like, okay, this, as we learn more about this profile, there's more they have opportunities for. So, hey, they were in the military. There's 12 military forgiveness programs. Well, the rabbit hole goes deeper. So, like, you keep seeing, I think it just felt like a constant rabbit hole from the very beginning. At first, I'm like, oh, my loans are federal and private. Let me learn more about that. And then that was the beginning of the end for me, because I get very obsessed with the problem. If like I really do want to see everybody have a better outcome. But with something this complex with this many variables, it's all about how many profiles and variations you can throw at it. So I think the federal program specifically, once we cracked the nut of like, we can basically, for any borrower, find some option, either federal or any loan assistance program. That's when I realized, okay, that's really hard to do. Like, you have to spend years to do what we've done. And I think, half of borrowers benefit from federal programs. So you're talking about over 20 million people. You're not talking about like a small population. So it's saving people like 240 a month on average, which is what we're saving in that category. Like, you're talking about billions of dollars, and so that's deposits, that's homes, that's all sorts of things. So I really realized in that moment, ooh, this is, we've done something that's hard to do.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I wish I had this when I was paying off my student loan. I mean, it's definitely Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I had the spreadsheet going and all that. And I mean, you definitely have to have tenacity to do it because it's a beast. And to your point, like I had 10 different like I don't know how you would call them, but like you said, there's federal, there's private. And then, I had $10,000 from that one year and $10,000. And it's like, it just all starts to add up or whatever semester. Right. And they're all different interest rates and all different. And so you're just sitting with the spreadsheet there trying to say, okay, where do I start? And how do I get rid of this like huge rock on my back?
Yeah, I'm happy you're past it. I mean, it's a great feeling getting there too, and like we're seeing lots of folks get forgiveness with public service loan forgiveness, and it's amazing to watch because there's just like so many people that are just to have that feeling of it being paid off it is a big rock, like weight lifted. You're getting rid of the rock. So um, even though I will say, even just having a plan was enough, like, to make me feel like, okay, I can actually like family plan now. Like even having some idea of what to do next. And that was sort of that's why we obsess over that is, knowing, giving people enough agency to make a best next step decision is like almost 90% of the battle here. And so, I'm happy that you were able to to get past that and actually do the work. I'd say the balances are getting really, really bad now that like the average borrower, especially recent grad, they almost have to do these federal programs because I mean, I remember graduating, looking at my balance and saying, "There's no way I can pay that monthly payment they're asking me to pay." I was making no money as an entrepreneur, and I called them and said, "Hey, what do I do here?" They're like, "Don't worry, you can pause your payments." I'm like, "Thank you, sir," and then left. And that was a huge mistake because what I ended up doing was instead of doing an income driven plan, I ended up in forbearance. So that was a $20,000 phone call when I did the math later. So these are the types of things.
Well, and they don't tell you that.
No, no, they don't even really know it. Honestly, they're just, the truth is servicers that what I've learned the deeper I've gone with this industry is like the servicers are doing what Ed is requiring them to do, the Department of Ed. And so it's almost like the system itself and its complexity is the villain. Like just the complexity of it is the problem. That's why we see the balances growing at insane rates, even still.
Wow. Well, to me, I think that you chose probably a very hard problem to tackle. But it's interesting to see that, because you had that experience in your own life, just the tenacity you had to wrestle with the problem and then to apply that same wrestling to some of these other areas like auto or home. And so, and again, like in all of these areas, it can become a mess if allowed to, right? I mean, again, like just some of the things that happen in the auto industry with really high percentage, loans and things like that. I mean, you can now apply your learnings to those other industries, which I think is a really powerful thing. And again, that's how you nail a niche. I mean, I think if I can't stress anything else on this podcast today with our time together, it's nail the niche before you try to build across. Because I think so many times people build across, they spread themselves thin, and then they don't solve any problem well or deeply. And then they try to take that to market, and it doesn't answer the problem that people are experiencing. And so there's such a powerful thought that you've kind of brought to this podcast, which is, hey, go deep, learn deep, right? And then you can take it broad. But if you just try to take it broad, I think that's how I see a lot of people fail, is that they just don't spend enough time going deep.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that's very true. That's why personal doing it either a personal need in your life or your work. Like if you work at a company, you're like, I freaking hate how I'm looking at Excel all day. I'm gonna build something to solve this because we can't find a vendor for it. That's another personal need. It doesn't have to be, oh my God, I like, have the student loan debt. It can be I have a need at work. I need like there's some big pain point that actually it can be a little pain point that you solve better than anyone else that's high impact, or a really deep pain point that you solve better than anyone else, and then you can broaden it. So I agree, it's just focusing on whatever that need is. And you can, if you're ever, there's a lot of moments in company building where you'll say to yourself, am I doing the right thing? Like, are we working on the right thing? lots of different questions and things that you challenge yourself with. Knowing the personal need that you had in the beginning is the anchor that helps you answer that question, so that you don't flail everywhere, which is very normal to do in the early days, for sure.
Yeah, that's so good. What final thoughts would you have for our listeners today as you kind of think about maybe just your own personal journey and something that you want to bring forward as something for people to think about?
Yeah, I would say, I think starting your own company is riskier than it sounds. It sounds riskier than it is what I meant to say. Like you actually are probably closer to being able to do it than you think. And there's probably a lot of people out there that are founders, who should be founders, who are just founders by nature. They just maybe don't know it. And I would say, like, putting steps in place to help guard against the perceived risk you feel is actually really important. And that's sort of an important thought to leave with, because the first year, I just remember saying, what do I need to prove to myself in this year to continue? Because I knew I could just go get a job after that, right? Because if you've had a job, you've done that before. You can go get a job again. Like, you've done it. So that's a perceived risk that is, if you're going to regret not doing it, then it's even riskier. So might as well plan it out. Say, okay, I have 30K of expenses in a year. I'm going to save up, 15K, maybe have friends or family help me with the other, whatever it takes. Don't do anything that'll put yourself in jeopardy, but take the perceived risk out of it, take the financial risk out of it, put that, live on ramen, whatever, 30K a year, it's whatever it takes. And then say, okay, in a year, I have to do this, this, and this to prove it to myself. And then, go for it. You can basically put those parameters in place, even without raising money, So I think it's a worthy investment. And it could have been, I didn't find anything in the first year that I felt was worth it, and then went into and do something else. But, I had I knew there was something, but, by the second year, it was very clear, crystal clear, that there was a unique approach, a team, unique, the approach, the attack is really important. The timing is 90% of it, and the team's a big part of it. And if those three things you're feeling like on a path towards, then why stop? But you'll never regret it even if you don't hit those things.
That's so good. And I hope that our listeners feel like they just got a shot in the arm today as they kind of go out and, live their day to day and try to think about these things that they want to start and these dreams that they have, that they would have a little bit of a additional push to move forward. Where can people follow you, Bobby?
Yeah. So best place is probably Twitter, just at Bo Matson, or LinkedIn. Feel free to ping me on there. It's probably the best place. I'm Bobby at Payitoff.io. So if you want to send me an email too, I'll respond super fast there.
Awesome. Thank you for your time today. This has been a really cool conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Well, to our listeners, thank you for joining the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. And remember, don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.
Thank you for joining us for the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Innovation Meets Leadership, and visit our site at innovationmeetsleadership.com for more innovation resources.